Hey, good one there, Kamba.
Well, welcome back to my channel. So, some disclaimers. First off, I'm still at the end of what was a nasty head cold or some kind of bug that I got. I don't know. That's why I sound a little strange. Also, very little editing is going to be done for this, and very little preparation has gone into it.
Lazy bum.
One of the things I want to do is this kind of video because one is to have regular content up as often as I can, and two, because look, the fact of the matter is I read a lot of different things. Obviously, I'm never going to be doing actual book reviews on everything that I'm reading, so this is a good way to tell you what I'm reading and to give you a little bit, some little snippets about those readings. So that's what I'm going to do. Again, that's why very little preparation that's gone into this. I'm not going to do a whole lot of editing. Alright, so let's alright, so let me do my fiction first. I do read fiction, by the way. So it is the case that the proportion of stuff it's pretty asymmetrical, disproportionate in terms of the amount of nonfiction versus fiction I read. But I do still read fiction. I always try to have one or two things of fiction that I'm reading while I'm reading all the other stuff. So, alright. Sorry, stupid, like I said, a nasty head cold thing. Alright, so, first thing is, somebody can be like, well, this doesn't count, but I'm counting it. I've always liked the Judge Dredd character, and especially like the Carl Urban adaptation of the Judge Dredd character. So I thought, why don't I try and read some of the some of these comic strips or graphic novel, however, because that's the thing. That's why I said some of you aren't going to count this, because you're like, well, right, that's just it's just like a comic or a graphic novel, however you want to think about it. But I'm counting it. Okay. Some of these have been pretty interesting, although a big problem with this is it says it's the best of Judge Dredd and a little bit of sleuthing, and I should have done this before I bought this, but this was reasonably priced, so that's why I got it. This isn't really the best of, and for instance, I realized this when I got to a story called The Cursed Earth, and I already knew enough about the Judge Dredd comics that knew this was a very important Dredd story, and unfortunately, they just gave me extracts here. So the thing is, you have like 20 volumes of case file. I mean, that's how many judges, because these have been going since the 1980s. So a little disappointed in what I've gotten here, but when I finish it and I like enough of what I've read in it, then I may seek out some of the other stuff. So that's that. And then the other thing that I keep dipping into from time to time is the annotated classic fairy tales. So I'm a big fan of annotated versions of classic works. You may not be able to read this here, but right, for instance, I have the Sherlock Holmes stories, I have Alice in Wonderland, I've got Edgar Allan Poe, I've got Lovecraft here. These are these annotated editions. I really love these, especially for classic works or works that I've already read, and I've also already reread, and I want to go back through them and get additional kind of like, well, I think of it as special features versions of these classic works, and with this you get these nice illustrations as well. And what I mean by annotation, right, as you can see here on the sides, right, you get little annotations, you get little backgrounds on the stories. And this includes all the classic things, right? Little Red Riding Hood, Beauty and the Beast, Jack and the Beanstalk. Some things I've never heard of, you got, but what's the one I just recently read? Kate Cracker Nuts, right? I've never heard of that. But a lot of things in here you're going to know. Little Mermaid, Ugly Duckling. So I've been, I had heard that, like Little Red Riding Hood, the original versions of that, the wolf actually rapes Little Red Riding Hood. Well, apparently that's not the case, at least according to the scholar that put this together. There's no early version it has that. Doesn't mean that Little Red Riding Hood's not some kind of allegory for burgeoning female sexuality or something like that. A lot of scholars do think that's what's going on. Versions of Little Red Riding Hood, but there is no, and maybe that's for the good that there's no version of that. However, in some of the earliest versions, it is the case that the wolf just wins. Like it tricks Little Red Riding Hood and eats her, and that's the end of the story. Okay, so, but there is no much darker version, and again, maybe that's for the better. But there are some interesting surprises in here. The Cinderella story, for instance, one of the early versions of that has the stepsisters when they're all trying to try on the slipper. The stepsisters are actually like cutting off portions of their feet, deforming their feet, right, to get these little bloody stumps to fit inside the slipper. Right? I mean, that's how desperate they are. So in some of the early versions of these stories, they can be pretty gruesome. So anyway, so still going through that. So that's my fiction. And all right, so let's go through my nonfiction here. First, let me get this. Yeah, let's do this. So look, I don't want to give too much personal information out here, but I am in a PhD program. I'm going to be finally going into the dissertation phase, and I may in the future have more to say about that. But what that's going to mean is a lot of the things I'm going to be reading are going to be related to the dissertation I'm going to be working on. This is one of those. So this is Mind is Machine, Volume 1. And I do have Volume 2 over there somewhere, okay? And this is a history of cognitive science, and it's exactly what it says it is. Like, it's pretty darn exhaustive. I am already familiar with a lot that's in here. So part of what this is me refamiliarizing myself with a lot of these topics. They're going to be relevant to what I'm hoping to do in the dissertation. So, all right, so this goes into, issues about the mind, the brain, artificial intelligence, all that stuff. So that's me working through this, and I'll be going through Volume 2 before too long. So that's that. Mind is Machine. So the next thing here is I got Mozi, the essential Mozi. Who is that? Well, look, one of the things I'm trying to do is over the past several months is remedy my deficiency in Eastern philosophy. Well, not so much I know a good deal about Eastern philosophy, but what I'm trying to do is correct for my lack of actually reading the primary sources, the actual original texts, right? So for instance, I just finished doing Confucius, his Analects. So that's part of what this is, and Mozi is one of these. If he's not Moziism is interesting because it's not Confucian, it's not Taoist, right? Which were the main before you get Buddhism that infiltrates China, ancient China. These were the essential philosophies. And then there's legalism, but look, I don't want this video to turn into a whole Eastern philosophy thing. But in this, so there is a larger work called the Book of Mo. And I decided not to get that. I'm trusting this scholar here to give me, as it says, the essential Mozi. And just really quickly, a kind of a summary of the view here is that whereas in Confucianism, you have hierarchies are important, duties are important. Moziism tries to eschew a lot of that, and one big thing about this particular philosophy is that it does not allow you, and I personally think this is a shortcoming. I think anytime you have a morality that has this view, I think it's a shortcoming of the moral system. But in any case, Moziism, I'm not sure how to say that, doesn't allow for any preferences in your morality, right? So you're supposed to be altruistic towards everyone, right? You're not supposed to have a preference for, your wife, your husband, your kids, or your family, or your more immediate friends, or those kinds of things. So that's kind of fundamentally what's going on with this. So I'm working through this. All right, are we good? We good to go? Okay. There's nobody there. Oh, what the heck's going on? Okay, well, think of this as like one of those little correction sheets you get in auction magazines. I don't know, it's a strange analogy, but I just recently rewatched Uncut Gems, and I guess that's why I'm using that analogy. All right, so, but what is this? Okay, look, as an aspiring, or I shouldn't say aspiring, I guess, as a philosopher, academic scholar in training, I have an obligation to tell you when I have screwed up or when I have not properly characterized a view, and I feel like I did that when I was trying to talk about Motzi and Motziism. I said something like, look, it's the view that, yeah, you got to be altruistic towards everyone. Okay? And that's not, strictly speaking, true, because altruism just means, when you act towards someone in a beneficial way without expecting anything in return, and that can have different flavors, different flavors. There can be different altruistic flavors, okay, and different moral systems are going to treat altruism in different sort of ways. So that wasn't the best way to characterize this view, is what I'm trying to say. So let me try again. All right. So the thing is, Motziism says that, look, the care that you have for like your friends and family, you should have the same care for strangers. Okay, and that sounds nice, okay, on the face of it, but their position is more radical than you might think. And I did say something along these lines, and I'll say it again. Their position is, insofar as I'm understanding this, okay, and because they say this again and again, saying this is very repetitive, which makes me glad that I got this essentially abridged version of that longer book of Mo. Anyways, so why is this position more radical than it sounds like? Well, because they, or Motzi and his followers, state that you are not allowed to have any kind of preferences, okay, in your moral system, right? So the care that you have for your family and friends, some of you may think that you're allowed to prioritize that care over, say, care for a complete stranger. Okay, you can't do that. So in Motziism, you can't do that. You don't have, that's not sufficient reason, merely because you're related or you have some other kind of relationship with someone. That's not sufficient reason to treat them differently than you would a stranger. Okay, so that's the position, and it's your care has to be universally applied. Okay, with no preferences. Now, you cannot have preferences. And as I said, for me personally, any moral, ethical, or normative system of any kind in which you cannot have preferences, I think is problematic. Okay, but that is a brain agitation for another time. Okay, sorry, I just needed to clear that up. Okay, so back to your regularly scheduled programming. All right, the next thing here is, I hesitate to call it a pleasure read, but it's at least the reading I'm doing that doesn't require a lot of cognitive effort, but it's not really a pleasure read, and that's The Girl with Seven Names. And as you can see, this is about a North Korean defector. If any of you have seen the recent documentary Beyond Utopia, that is based on this woman here. And the reason it's called The Girl with Seven Names is she's had to change her name several times. Sometimes that's been forced on her. Sometimes she's done that on her own. As you can imagine, if you know anything about the North Korean regime, this is pretty bleak stuff. Okay, it can be pretty emotional, but I think it's necessary to know this stuff. So I'm about done with this. All right, the last thing here to show I'm working through is Robert Spencer's The Critical Quran. Now, the thing is, and this would take a whole nother video to do, so let me try and keep my comments brief here. Unlike in Christianity and in Judaism, there has not developed a robust critical tradition in Islam. It didn't have to be that way. History could have gone differently, but again, that's a story for another time. And so, and I've had a version of the Quran have used in the past. That's a commentary on it, you know, but it's from a very pious, right, perspective, and the vast majority, if not just about all of them, are going to come from that. Not necessarily anything wrong with that, but I wanted something more critical. I wanted a more critical take on the Quran. I wanted something like a lot of the biblical commentaries I have, right, that look at the text from a critical standpoint. And this is basically, you know, the only one of its kind. And in part because of that, it can get a little too polemical. And so, you know, what I mean by that is sometimes it doubles, even triples down the criticism of Islam. Look, I say that as someone who's not an apologist for Islam, as you're going to see, or as I should be clear in the next video, which, by the way, has to do with this. Okay, I've already shot that. Right? I just need to get down to the work of editing it and putting it together. But the next video is something that I have taken from this. In fact, why don't I give you a little preview, a little snippet of what's to come with that. Boop. Pop out a boob and get to suckling. All right, so be on the lookout, as I said, for the actual, you know, video. Isn't necessarily a review, but I think many of you will enjoy it nonetheless. All right, till next time.